I never expected my decision to study Chinese would lead to such drama. After graduating with my linguistics degree, I knew I wanted to immerse myself in a new language and culture. China seemed perfect: rich history, complex language, and amazing food. Plus, the university in Beijing offered an intensive one-year program that would give me the foundation I needed. The scholarship I received made it even better, covering most of my living expenses so I could focus on studying rather than worrying about money. The first few weeks were exactly what I hoped for. Our teacher was this wonderful woman who had been teaching foreigners for over a decade. She spoke multiple languages, including French, which initially seemed great since we had several students from France and Belgium in our class. She even organized weekly cultural exchange sessions where we could practice our Chinese with local students. But that's where the problem started. Every class, the French-speaking students would ask questions in French. At first, it was just occasional clarification, but it quickly became almost half the class. For those of us who didn't speak French, it was frustrating to miss out on important discussions about the language we were all there to learn. A Korean student even approached me privately to share the same concerns, but she was too nervous to speak up. One day, I finally spoke up. I politely asked if we could keep questions in English, explaining that some of us couldn't follow the French discussions. Our teacher was understanding and agreed it was a fair point. She told the class that from then on, questions should be asked in English so everyone could benefit from the discussion. The French-speaking students immediately started whispering among themselves, shooting me dirty looks. After class, I could hear them talking about me. One of them complained about who I thought I was, while another made snide comments about people who couldn't speak proper languages. They even started a group chat specifically to exclude the non-French speakers, making plans right in front of us while pretending we didn't exist. I tried to ignore it, but things escalated quickly. They'd walk past my table in the campus cafe, deliberately bumping it to spill my drinks. When I'd be studying in the park, they'd walk by and accidentally spit near me. One time, it actually landed on my leg. They even started spreading rumors to the local Chinese students that I was some kind of troublemaker who had been kicked out of universities back home. When I confronted them about their disgusting behavior, they just mocked me, calling me the language police and laughing it off. One of them even started recording me on their phone, trying to provoke a reaction they could use against me. The harassment continued until one morning I found my dorm room door covered in graffiti. They'd written Nazi, apparently thinking I was German. I'm not, and various other insults. I reported it to the International Student Office, but they needed proof to take action. The building's security cameras had mysteriously stopped working that night, which seemed far too convenient. That's when I got creative. I bought a small security camera from a Chinese shopping site and set it up in the hallway. Then I made sure the group saw me leaving campus, heading toward the metro station. I treated myself to some amazing dumplings and cold beer while waiting. My Chinese friend from the cultural exchange program kept texting me updates about what the group was doing, confirming they were heading towards my building. When I returned, my door was vandalized again, but this time I had them on video. 5 of them were clearly visible, writing on my door and even damaging it with kicks. I took the footage straight to the university administration. The video even caught them bragging about their previous vandalism and planning future pranks. The timing couldn't have been better or worse for them. It was near the end of the semester, just before final exams. All 5 students were expelled immediately, meaning they'd wasted an entire semester since they wouldn't receive any credits. Their parents had already flown in for graduation, only to find out their children wouldn't be walking across any stage. But I wasn't done. With help from a Chinese friend, I wrote an anonymous letter to the local police about the vandalism. The group had planned an extensive travel tour of China after the semester. They had booked luxury hotels in 5 cities and even paid for expensive guided tours of historic sites. However, their visa extensions were denied due to their misconduct at an educational institution. They lost their semester credits and thousands in non-refundable travel bookings. I'd say the lesson about respect and common courtesy cost them quite a bit. Their universities back home were notified about the expulsion, putting their academic futures in serious jeopardy. Strangely enough, the remaining French-speaking students in other classes were lovely people. We even ended up having hot pot dinners together a few times. One of them actually apologized to me for not standing up to the troublemakers sooner. I guess every nationality has its share of entitled people who think rules don't apply to them. I've been working at this upscale clothing store for about 3 years now. The pay is decent, and the employee discount helps me build a nice wardrobe without breaking the bank. Plus, most of our customers are pretty pleasant. They know they're shopping at a high-end store and usually act accordingly. Well, usually. I started as a sales associate and worked my way up to assistant manager within 2 years. I take pride in knowing our inventory inside and out, and I've developed a keen eye for suspicious behavior. When you work in retail long enough, you start to notice patterns in how shoplifters operate. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I was organizing the new spring collection when this woman, in her 40s, walked in with her son, who looked about 11. At first look, they seemed like regular customers. The woman was well dressed, and her son was quiet and polite. They spent about 20 minutes browsing through our designer section, picking up various items. What caught my attention was the sheer amount of clothing they were gathering. We're talking about 10 pieces from our most expensive brands, plus several accessories and handbags. Now, while some of our wealthy clients do make large purchases, something about their behavior seemed off. The woman kept looking around nervously, and her son looked increasingly uncomfortable. When they headed to the fitting rooms, I quietly alerted our security guard to keep an eye on the security cameras. I continued my work but kept them in my peripheral vision. About 15 minutes later, they emerged from the fitting room empty-handed. They hadn't brought anything to the counter to put on hold, and none of the items were left in the fitting room. They had simply vanished. I approached them casually and asked about their fitting room experience. Karen brushed me off with a dismissive comment about nothing fitting right. Her son was looking at the floor, shifting from foot to foot. They started walking toward the exit, and that's when I gave our security guard the signal. The security guard called out to her, asking her to stop. When she questioned what the problem was, he explained that they needed to check her bags. She immediately became defensive, refusing the bag check and claiming it was harassment. I tried to explain that it was store policy, but she cut me off with angry comments about being a big spender at our store. The security guard warned her that if she didn't comply, they would have to involve the police. That's when everything went crazy. This woman, this supposedly high-class shopper, literally shoved her son aside and made a break for the door. Our security guard managed to catch her, but she wasn't going down without a fight. She started screaming about knowing her rights and demanding to be released. She was thrashing around like a wild animal, and then suddenly she pulled out pepper spray. Before anyone could react, she sprayed our security guard right in the face. Thankfully, his partner was nearby and tackled her before she could spray anyone else. The second security guard ordered her to stay down while informing her that the police were on their way. She responded with threats about suing everyone and getting her lawyer involved. The whole time, her poor son was standing there, mortified. When the police arrived, they found over $3,000 worth of merchandise stuffed in her bags. The police took her away in handcuffs while she continued to rant about her rights and her lawyer. Her ex-husband had to come pick up their son, and he looked like this wasn't the first time he'd had to deal with something like this. Our security guard was okay after getting his eyes flushed out, though he had to take the rest of the day off. We later found out that Karen got sentenced to 18 months in prison. Apparently, the pepper spray assault combined with her previous record didn't sit well with the judge. The store also got a very apologetic letter from her ex-husband, along with a generous gift card for our security guard. I'm a 42-year-old who grew up in a quiet rural area where our house was one of just 4 homes on a country road. My family wasn't wealthy, but we were comfortable enough. My father worked as a mechanic in town, and my mother was a high school teacher. We knew all our neighbors well, the kind of community where everyone looked out for each other. Our mailboxes were placed together at the intersection of our country road and the main road, about a quarter-mile walk from our houses. It was never a problem until someone started deliberately destroying them. They'd drive through all four mailboxes at night, breaking the wooden posts and scattering our mail everywhere. The first time it happened, we all thought it was just some drunk driver who lost control. My dad and I spent that Saturday replacing our mailbox, while our neighbors did the same. But then it happened again, and again, and again. Each time we'd have to spend our weekends fixing the damage. After the fifth time, I overheard my dad talking to one of our neighbors on the phone. He was expressing his frustration about the situation and suggesting they needed to do something permanent about it. That evening, my dad came to my room and told me to get to bed early because we had a big project planned for the next day. The next morning, after a quick breakfast, we headed to the mailbox site. All three neighbor families were already there with their sons. One neighbor had brought his tractor with a post hole digger, while another had somehow acquired two massive railroad ties. There was also cement and a mini mixer. My dad gathered everyone around and announced it was time to start digging. The digging was brutal. Our area was incredibly rocky, and we'd hit stone every few inches. We'd take turns. One person would dig until they couldn't anymore, then pass the shovel to the next. The motivation to finish was strong because we all knew this would be the last time we'd have to fix these mailboxes. It took us the entire morning to dig two 6-foot deep holes. We positioned the 12-foot railroad ties, making sure they were perfectly vertical. Then we mixed and poured cement around them. We added a sturdy crossbeam and mounted our new mailboxes. One of the neighbors remarked confidently that these mailboxes wouldn't be going anywhere now. A month passed without incident. Then one morning, as the other kids and I were walking to catch the school bus, we saw it, an old blue Buick Century with its front end completely destroyed. The grille was smashed in and one wheel was bent at an odd angle. Nobody was in the car. We ran to the closest house and told our neighbor about the crashed car. She immediately said she would call the highway patrol. When we got back to the road, the car was still there, looking pathetic next to our perfectly intact mailboxes. We got on the bus wondering what had happened. Later that day, we learned the truth. The driver was a 14-year-old kid who had a daytime license, something that was legal in our area, but he already had one strike against him for speeding the week before. The second incident meant he'd lose his license until he turned 16. Then it got better. The insurance company investigated and discovered the kid's history of mailbox vandalism. They refused to pay for the car damage and moved his family's insurance plan into their high-risk category. The kid's father was furious. He tried to argue that the mailboxes weren't up to code and were dangerous. But when he tried to fight it, he discovered there were no specific regulations about mailbox construction in our county or state. They had no legal grounds to challenge us. That was 30 years ago. I visited home last month, and those mailboxes are still standing strong, a testament to what happens when a community comes together to solve a problem. The railroad ties have weathered to a deep gray, but they haven't moved an inch. After discovering the Entitled People subreddit, I figured it was time to tell everyone about the greedy landlord who learned the hard way not to mess with our neighborhood. I grew up in a working-class suburb caught between some packed apartment complexes and a couple of highways. Being one of the few white families there wasn't always easy. We had our share of troubles, but most neighbors accepted us. It wasn't the fanciest place, but it was home and people looked out for each other. At the heart of our community was the community center, run by this incredible woman who everyone respected. She was like the neighborhood's guardian angel, always calm and fair. Never saw her break her moral code once. Our original landlord was this sweet Asian lady who understood that times could be tough. She'd help tenants who were struggling by finding them maintenance work around her properties and knocking more off their rent than the work was probably worth. Looking back, it might not have been strictly legal, but she had a good heart. Unfortunately, she passed away under some suspicious circumstances. Her sons inherited everything but wanted nothing to do with real estate. When they looked at the books, they couldn't understand how their mom made it work with all the reduced rents, so they started selling properties. That's when our nightmare began. The new landlord who bought our house was a complete jerk from day one. First thing he did was jack up our rent to market rate since the property changed hands. Then he made his rules crystal clear. He told us that rent had to be paid in full on the first of every month, with absolutely no exceptions. He wouldn't accept partial payments or work arrangements. He threatened that if the full amount wasn't there on the first, we'd get an eviction notice on the second. It was bleeding our savings dry, but we were hanging on. Around this time, that amazing woman from the community center had gotten the city to help fund neighborhood renovations. They were fixing everything street by street: pipes, sinkholes, fences, paint, you name it. Our house was on the last street to be renovated, and this guy couldn't wait to kick us out so he could cash in. He never said it directly, but even 10-year-old me could see through his game. He started doing random inspections and making mountains out of molehills. He even tried to accuse us of animal abuse when our cat got attacked by what we're pretty sure was a raccoon. When we pointed out that the vet had confirmed it was an animal attack, he just smugly told us he'd let the authorities decide that. It was clear he was trying to find any excuse to get rid of us. We got the message and started planning our move to my oldest brother's place, about 400 miles away. Most of us left except for my other brother, who stayed behind for his job. He was cutting every corner possible to keep up with the crazy rent. Then one month, he came up $20 short, just 20 bucks. The landlord immediately pounced on this opportunity, telling my brother he had 30 days to get out since he hadn't followed the rules about full payment on the first. When we came back to help my brother move, something weird happened. For the first time ever, nobody in the neighborhood gave us any trouble. No nasty comments, no glares. Nothing. It was like they all understood what we were going through. The landlord tried to rush us out even before our time was up. He demanded we leave in 20 days, and when my brother reminded him we legally had a week more than that, the landlord just coldly said he didn't care and wanted us out. The community center woman bought us a couple extra days, but we still had to watch workers throwing our stuff into a dumpster when we were supposed to have 3 more days. Here's where it gets good. The landlord immediately moved in himself, thinking he could get the city to pay for renovations if he lived there. But our community center guardian angel shut that down fast. She explained to him that since the property was registered as a rental when the project was approved, the budget couldn't be changed. She told him the partial coverage had been approved for us, not him, and he'd have to pay for everything himself. He tried to cheap out on renovations, just throwing in some carpet and paint. Then he tried to sell the house, but the neighborhood made sure that wouldn't happen. Every time someone came to look at the place, neighbors would either make tons of noise or tell potential buyers the whole story. The house wouldn't sell at his asking price. After months of this, he had to keep lowering the price. When he finally found a buyer, the community center woman made him jump through every possible hoop. That's when karma hit. During the mandatory inspections, they found black mold from his cheap renovation job where he'd damaged some pipes. She somehow managed to delay him getting the news about the mold until it was too late to fix it. The house got condemned, and she made sure the city forced him to pay for demolishing it himself. In the end, this greedy jerk who tried to make a quick buck by destroying our family ended up losing thousands of dollars and spent a year fighting legal battles. The neighborhood made sure he paid for what he did to us, and I heard he never showed his face there again.